In this video, I review Seventh Continent. Not that you would be able to tell that by looking at the cover on the little box. That only has this mysterious image here, which is either the skull of a very strange animal, or looking at these arms here, an alien that is dancing like we used to do in the 80s. I don't know, but it's very strange, very mysterious, Rorschach style. But you have to look at the side of the box to figure out the name of the game, which is Seventh Continent. Look at the subtitle: Explore, Survive, You Are the Hero. And if you grew up a couple of decades ago, like I did, and you're familiar with Choose Your Own Adventure and fighting fantasy books, you can recognize that that's kind of the tagline that you have there. You're the hero, you're the protagonist, etc., etc. And this game is undoubtedly being inspired by interactive fiction of the 80s and early 90s, by game books of yesteryear. So, but it is resolved in card form. It is a board game in the sense that you will play cards on the table to form a map, and you will move on that map. It is a card game in the sense that, again, this map is broken down into cards. But those cards are not shuffled, so again, it feels more like a tile-based board game than a card game proper. Although, again, the cards are not as sturdy as tiles. They're more like your typical card. In this game, you will perform different types of mission. You will try to defeat curses. So each curse is an adventure. The curse will tell you your starting point. You'll place on the table the card that depicts your starting area. And then you'll expand, travel around, discovering new areas, meeting the inhabitants of the place, passing or trying to pass different types of challenges, and so on and so forth. In my video, I'll be a little vague because I don't want to give you any spoilers. A big part of the fun of the game is precisely to discover what the game has to offer, what is in the next area, what are the secrets that a place is hiding, what you need to do to get access to this or that area. So I'll have to be a little vague. I still hope that I'll be able to give you a good sense of how the game plays and what the game has to offer. Now, let's take a closer look at the game in the measure in which I can talk about it, of course. This is what the box looks like after you organize the components. Clearly, most of the game is cards, and cards. Cards are numbered. These are adventure cards. They will form the world that you will explore, events that you encounter, that you have to face, etc., etc., etc. Lots of these. And then here we have the cards that are used to set up the game, a place where you will place cards that you are saving, meaning if you're saving the game from one session to the other. Then we have event cards. They're divided by type. You shuffle each type separately, so all the 3 together, all the 4 together, and so on and so forth. And then you also have skills and advanced skills. Here you will have tokens, stand-up tokens made of cardboards indicating the position of your heroes. They look like this. Then you also have plastic miniatures that also represent the heroes, but since I don't paint miniatures, I prefer to use the cardboard ones because they are more colorful and easy to tell apart without painting. But again, if you paint miniatures, I think you're gonna have fun painting those. So it is a game about exploring the fictional Seventh Continent. Oh, speaking of the components, also another thing is this thing here. It took me a while before I realized that it was a magnifying lens. And sometimes you want to look at the cards, at the adventure cards, a little more up close. Now, these cards will form the world that you are exploring. At the beginning of each game, you choose a curse that you want to face. Curse pretty much is the mission. If you eliminate the curse, you win the game. And that is, you win the adventure. You have a card, sort of like the cover of the adventure, and suppose we're playing the Swamp of Madness, then we have a card that describes the situation, tells us the card that we need to pick up to start the adventure, and may have clues in the back. I'm not going to linger on the clues too much. So, for example, here we're told that to start the adventure, we take card 151 and we put it into play. Then we go to the box to play the Swamp of Madness, and we go to 151. Well, it'll be the one after 150, right? So we go to 150, and then 150, and 150, and 150, and 150, and 150, and 150. This is by design. There are certain codes that have multiple cards. That gives a replay value. That means that when a card tells you, pick up a 150, you know the type of thing that you are gonna get, but not exactly which of that kind. 151, we happen to have two, a green and a golden one. When that is the case, you always start with the green. The golden one, I hope it's not a spoiler, usually represents, well, something that develops from this situation. The card may have a text on the back that you read at the beginning to get a sense of the situation, sort of like a paragraph in a game book. Take a minute to read it. And after you read the text, you put the card face up on the table, as we're going to do in a second. But first I want to let you have a look at the card up close. This is what the card looks like. Actually, you know what? Let's put it down. I think it's easier for me than to point out things to you. So the card represents the area in which your heroes currently are. As you can see, there are icons there. These type of icons represent actions that your heroes can take. This, for example, is to investigate. This is to walk. There are a lot of other possible actions, and here you have a play rate that tells you all of the actions that are available based on the icons. As you can see, a lot of possible actions. Each action has these two symbols attached to them. The first one indicates the number of cards that you draw when you're trying to perform that action, and the second one, the number of successes that you need. For example, to walk, I need to draw 2 cards. I'll need 0 successes. That means it's not really a test. I'm simply spending 2 cards from my health deck. This one is a basic action, 0 and 0. So I don't need to draw cards, and I don't need any success. There may be actions where you do need to succeed, and there will be a number here in the star. Suppose this was 2 and 1. That means I'm drawing 2 cards from my action deck, and I need at least 1 success. Some cards have stars, a certain number of stars, some don't. Some have half stars, then you need 2 of them to put a star together. Basically, from the cards that you draw, if you're able to put together the required number of stars, you're able to pass the test, and then you will follow the actions based on that. This deck that I mentioned, the action deck, is also your health deck. That means it's a deck made of generic action cards plus different action cards that each hero brings. Different heroes come with a small decks, with different small deck. You shuffle them all together, and you have this larger deck of, again, action cards or health cards. Because how many cards you have in that deck also determines how much health or energy you still have. As you take actions, you're discarding cards on the deck, so the deck is depleted. Once the deck is empty, all the cards are in the discard pile, you shuffle the discard pile, and if you're taking tests or spending cards for whatever effect, you draw them from the discard pile. But at that point, if you draw a curse card from the discard pile, you lose the game immediately. It's instant death. Whereas if you're drawing them from the regular pile, and if you draw a curse card, that's simply a fail. That doesn't do anything. It clogs your deck, but doesn't have negative effects. But again, that means you want to keep your deck for as long as possible in a good shape without reducing it to 0 and turning it into a big discard pile. Luckily enough, you have actions like sleeping, eating, drink a healing potions, various effects that allow you to move cards from the discard pile back into your deck. So the deck is also your health tracker, also a little bit of a timer, because it's almost impossible to continue without spending actions. So, but this is really pretty much, I explained to you the main mechanic of the game. Pretty much the game is go around, perform actions. Every time you need to perform an action, take that test by drawing cards and see if you're successful, and follow the instructions. And certain, again, cards, which I'm not showing you, so you don't have spoilers, have 2 possible outcomes, again, based on whether you pass or not. This is not the case because the success number is 0, so you're always going to pass when you take that action. symbols to indicate the resources available in that area. Other things that you see here that just looking nice atmospheric thematic elements actually may have important game effects. And this is a fictional example, not a spoiler. Maybe in an earlier adventure, I got a card that says when you see that grass, you can turn into a healing potion. That means that I acquired the ability of turning that grass into a potion. Then if I add that card and I see that grass, I can activate that effect. I pretty much interact with that grass, which otherwise just looks like a generic piece of landscape. So that's interesting stuff. And maybe the same applies here. Maybe the same applies to that little symbol. What just seems to be decoration and atmosphere may turn out to be an interesting game element. There may be hidden numbers that are hidden within the tile, and if you see the hidden number, then you take the card that corresponds to that number, which usually represents the same location, but now with more options, meaning more detail, more things that you can do based on the things that you discover when you investigated the area where you found the hidden number. Also, you see these connections here. This indication tells me that on this side of this area where I am, there is a card 140, which we're gonna get out of the box. 140, where art thou? 140. And we put it face down here because we haven't discovered it yet. Then you also see that there is an event of level 7 there. So we take a level 7 event, we shuffle the level 7 events. See, it looks like a cloudy, foggy area, and we put it there. If we want to enter that area, we need to first resolve that effect. This is pretty much really how the game plays, and I fear to show you more stuff because I don't want to give you spoilers. Go around the board, perform actions, use special abilities. Again, the rules are so simple, but then there are a lot of special cases that come from the fact that you can use certain items. Each player has certain abilities, certain cards that you can play, etc., etc., etc. But generally speaking, budget your action and your health well. Move from an area to an area, face events, so resolve the event that is described on the other side of this card, which I'm not showing you. Read this text, which I'm not showing you. Look at what is here, which I'm not showing you. I know it's like one of the most bleak reviews I've ever filmed. What the heck? Spoiler alert, I'm gonna turn this card to show you what's here and how the landscape can grow. And here, for example, you can see if you get here, then from here, you can go to here, 151, which is this one. And now we have other locations that we can access. We have 183, and we're gonna look for the right card and place it there, face down, under a 7 event. And then there's going to be another location here, 112. So as you can see, you discover the world as you go. You find out new details, new places, and anything and everything can happen. Anything that you imagine may happen in a narrative, say in a game book, could happen here. Monsters, events, encounters, puzzles, riddles, challenges, counterintuitive thinking. Sometimes you need dice also, especially to keep track of how many points, how many charges you have for certain events. But anything and everything that may happen in a game book, that may happen in a narrative in general, may happen here. You travel around the world, and sometimes that is good enough. You reach the end of the adventure. Sometimes from there you move to another world, or maybe you find a place where there is an icon. You, for example, you dig there. That's an example of a test. You take 3 cards and you dig there, and maybe from there I found a dungeon, and the dungeon card tells me, put away all of these cards because we moved in another area, and put down another card to start a new area, which is the beginning of the dungeon. So you move from area to area. Maybe you jump on a boat or on an airplane or on a blimp. You travel to a different place, above places, climb a mountain, cross a forest, enter a dungeon, explore a temple. Anything and everything may happen. So there isn't just a single way of winning the game, because depending on the scenario that you're playing, you continue until you die or until you complete adventure. And again, you lose the game if your deck is depleted, and when you're drawing from the discard pile, you draw a curse card, and that brings immediate defeat to the group. Board games inspired by game books. We have had several of those in the past decades. There was Warlock of Firetop Mountain, based on the game book of the same title, but that was a fairly conventional board game in my opinion. And then other games that were more similar to game books structurally. For example, Chainsaw Warrior came out in the 80s. The designer's notes say that indeed the game was inspired by game books, and the designer was using cards instead of paragraphs, so different cards would represent different type of rooms that you were exploring, monsters that you were encountering. And the designer wanted a game book with infinite replayability, because as you shuffle those cards representing places and encounters, there would be a huge range of events. True, but the problem was that precisely because of that, those places and events would come out of the deck randomly. True, it's a new configuration every time, but some of those configurations make no sense at all. They're not fun to play at all. And in some cases, the game was literally unwinnable in case you got stuck in a place because the thing that you need to move further was lower in the deck and you hadn't drawn the card yet because of the way the game was shuffled. That pretty much, by the way, exemplifies the catch-22 that games that want to tell a story have to face. You create a combination system which is absolutely neutral, can recombine any element with anyone else. You have infinite or virtually infinite replayability, but the story may not feel much like a story at all. Or you create an overarching narrative with all of the trappings of narrative, with characters, interactions, or things that are discovered, the joy of finding B after A as a consequence of A. But because of that, the game will have a limited replay value, because once you uncover the story that had been designed in the components, then the joy of repeating the story is minimal. Maybe you failed the first time, you want to see how a different strategy would have gotten in a different place, but you cannot play the same story as many times as otherwise. So this Seventh Continent definitely goes the way of the game that tell a story, and a strong story with an organic organizational components, predetermined organizational components that you don't know yet. So there's the fun of discovering them, but that also means limited replay value. Now you have a good number of scenarios, but again, each scenario you won't probably play more than twice, if that. Maybe you'll be happy after playing it once. I have to say, not only is there a good number of scenarios here, but also the scenarios are fairly long. Most likely will take you a full evening to play one. It may take you more than an evening, and that is good. That is good. So there's still a lot of value in here, replay value wise. But now the point is, of course, how fun is it? Is it good to play? Because replay value is nothing if play value is little. Now, a game book in card form, a game book in board game format. And maybe you're wondering, why do we need that to start with? Because we already have game books, and they're called game books, and they're in book format. What happens when you translate that into a playable board game? What are the pluses and minuses? And I can tell you already, there are both. There are pluses and minuses. The minuses mainly have to do with the logistics, with the fact that looking for those cards and then putting them back in the box in the right order is more complicated, takes more time, energy, and mental devotion than simply flipping through the pages of a game book. Paragraphs 340 in a game book will always be between the two that are sequential, 39 and 41. Here, card 340 will be in the right place only if you took the time to place it there. And if you made a mistake, then it's going to be a while to figure it out. Also, as you saw, you can't necessarily estimate where a certain card will be within a certain range, because you may have a lot of cards called 150, and then the one between 150 and 199, or a single copy, unless there is a bunch of there between 170, which is like 20 of them. So you really have to it really takes a while before you find the right card. And you have to be careful again to put them back in the right spot, and it may take a while. That element is more cumbersome than flipping through the pages of a game book. There's no question there, and it's really pretty much the only negative that I have about the game. Again, with the exception of the fact limited replay value, which is not necessarily a negative. It depends on how much you're getting out of the story and how much you want to enjoy a game, which is about progressive discovery. But the logistics are cumbersome, and that is objectively there. So, but are there enough pluses, especially when compared to a game book, to make up for that? Heck, yes. To me there are, and they're strong enough to make it worth it to play this game instead of a game book. By the way, I read game books and I play this game, but when I play this game, I don't miss the game books because what the game gives me is more than enough, and game books cannot give me that. And what is this pleasure? Well, the visual pleasure, it's considerable. Those map tiles are really evocative. They really give me this sense of a strange, eerie, mysterious place that I'm exploring. The fact that I'm literally seeing the unexplored edge and I don't know what can be there: a swamp, a mountain, a temple, a jungle. That really increases the sense of wonder, the sense of surprise, the sense of discovery. And as you add new tiles, you're seeing this sprawling map growing on the table, sometimes to a considerable size. Just the visual effect is very appealing to me. It's very charming, and it really helps me with the sense of immersion, of mental immersion in the world of the story. Game books can do that very well, and sometimes they give you a map at the beginning, but then, well, you're looking at the whole map and you know more or less what's going to be there. Some areas may be unclear, but it's not nearly, you don't have the same sense of discovery and pleasure seeing the map grow before your very eyes. And also the map has a limited size, maybe a good quality, but here there's so much detail. The colors are nice, the shapes and the drawings are nice. And also the fact that you're looking at this art the first time and it looks just nice. And as I said, some elements that appear to be in the background turn out to be relevant in later adventures, or in any case later in that adventure. To me, it was almost mind-blowing. Some elements look interesting, and now I really get the sense that they had that knowledge. I almost feel like insider knowledge. Most players would not know what that element is for. The hidden numbers, I guess not everybody will enjoy them. You have the magnifying lens if it's a problem there. But also I like the fact sometimes I was playing the game and then I got kind of stuck, and it turned out that there was a hidden number that had been there for like an hour on the table right in front of me, staring and yelling at me and waving at me, and I completely missed it. Discovering later had that element of pleasure. Game book also has sometimes the sort of like secret passages, but like boom, seeing it right in front of my eyes. Number, hidden detail that I had missed. There was a certain visceral quality to that revelation that I really enjoyed. So it is it's really maybe not just a game book, but almost like an interactive map. And again, the visual aspect, the spatial aspect really helped me get into the story, being drawn in, and I found that to be very, very fun, very exciting, very compelling. Totally making it worth it, the extra time that it takes me to take out the cards and put them back, and basically those elements that I do not have to worry about when I'm playing a game book. Now, as for the type of adventure, mind you, it is a specific type of adventure. It's reminiscent of adventure video games, like Myst, or these video games that are about exploring a mysterious and strange and eerie place, combining things, finding secrets, figuring out how machines work, etc., etc. It's not a narrative which is about psychology. It's not a psychological drama. It's not so much about interacting with other human beings. In fact, actually, I would say that there is a special atmosphere that comes from the fact that you're visiting these landscapes that almost look like post-apocalyptic, but without all of the sand, the Mad Max, all the destruction. Things are nice and tidy, but you almost feel like there's no one there. There are animals. Occasionally, you will see some humanoids here and there, but it's almost a sense of silence, a sense of suspension, as you're interacting mainly with the landscape, with objects, with doors, with puzzles, with mechanism. And then when there is an interaction with a human or a humanoid, then that acquires a particular significance. But then there is a very vaguely dreamy quality. Really have, like in some of those old adventure video games, the experience that is not so much like you're entering a parallel world, but you're entering a dream about that parallel world. There is a strange atmosphere that comes from, again, this beautifully crafted tiles with these nice maps, with this nice landscape, which itself has a vaguely surreal quality, and that to me is enhanced by the fact that this seems to be a not densely populated area in which your imagination has more room to expand. Maybe that's what it is. But definitely I found the atmosphere very compelling. On top of that, this is also a game, so the exquisitely ludic elements of the game are also fun because you have a resource management engine, which is very unforgiving, so you really have to pay attention to how thick your deck is and how you're gonna spend your actions. There's gonna be a push your luck element as you're spending cards to pass a certain test. Maybe you invest a lot in a test that turns out, even after you pass it, to be not particularly useful, and that of course is part of the fun of the traps that the design has that make the game interesting. But what is important to me is that the ludic element is so simple, so linear, doesn't get in the way of enjoying the theme, the atmosphere, the story, the exploration. It's just interesting enough that it makes it worth to pay attention to it. And and as I see my deck, of course, I'm making decisions about that. But at the same time, again, it's so simple, so linear, that it still allows me to enjoy the story and the exploration, while at the same time, without at the same time feeling trivial. Because again, if nothing else, again, it's very visceral. I visually and literally see my deck getting thinner. I may not get to count how many cards I have, but it's a countdown that works very well because, again, it has an emotional resonance, while at still at the same time interacting with decisions that I may make rationally about how to optimize resources, etc., etc. But I didn't feel it was a Euro game. I didn't feel that aspect of the game made it, crunching numbers, etc., etc. Although somebody that does crunch numbers may have a better chance of winning the game the way I play it, which is kind of like I go how I feel, definitely enhances my enjoyment of the game, and the fact that to me the game is mainly about exploration through the means of optimizing your health deck and seeing the way the game really works for me. I am a big fan of gamebooks, and to me this is a great gamebook, or I should say a series of gamebooks, because again you have like 8 adventures or so here, so it's really like collected edition of adventures, and each adventure had a different flavor, but the overall family resemblance was one that I enjoyed very much. Adventure had a strong visual appeal, an interesting puzzle element, a strong and compelling atmosphere. It was a little annoying to move cards around and then to put it back in the box, but overall I found that was a small price to pay for all the fun and enjoyment that I had out of the experience of playing 7 Continent. Very original, very innovative game. You will not be able to replay it forever, but when you play it, I think you're gonna have a good time, and that probably is the most important thing.